I never thought that by the time I was 68, I would be a prisoner in my own house. A house that I built with my own hands, putting a part of my soul into each brick. The house that was supposed to be my fortress at the end of my life had turned into a battlefield. It's only been 2 weeks since they moved in. Hugh, my only son, his wife Paris, and their 6-year-old son Liam. I hadn't seen Hugh in almost a year, not since last Christmas, when he'd stopped by for 3 hours, dropped off a gift, wrapped apparently at the supermarket, and hurried off, citing some important business. And now they're here, living on my property, eating my food, breathing my air. It all started with a phone call on the last Thursday in April. I was just finishing tending to the garden when the phone rang. Shaking the earth off my hands, I walked leisurely to the receiver. "Dad, it's me." Hugh's voice sounded strangely muffled, as if he were speaking from under a blanket. "Hugh, is something wrong?" My son never called just to ask how I was doing. "We're being evicted, Dad. The factory closed 2 months ago, and I couldn't find anything suitable, and..." He stopped talking, and I heard a woman's voice in the background saying something fast and irritated. Paris, of course. Anyway, we had nowhere to go. I looked out the window at the manicured garden, at the paths I'd made last summer, and realized what he was getting at. And part of me, that stubborn, resentful part that remembered all the missed birthdays and indifferent phone greetings, wanted to say, "That's your problem, son. You're a grown man. Figure it out for yourself." But the other part, the part that remembered 5-year-old Hugh with his gap-toothed smile and perpetually skinned knees, just couldn't do it. "How much lodging do you need?" I asked, knowing I'd already made my decision. "We'll find something in a couple of months, by fall at the most," Hugh rambled on. "Come," I interrupted him. "There's plenty of room." And here they are. Hugh hadn't changed much. The same nervous look, the same habit of adjusting his glasses as if they were about to slip off his nose. Only there was more gray in his hair and tiredness in his eyes. Paris was about 10 years younger than him. I'd only seen her a few times in their 8 years of marriage. Slender, with sharp cheekbones and an equally sharp look in her dark eyes. Hair dyed ash blonde, perfect manicure. Even in jeans and a simple blouse, she looked like she was about to head to a photo shoot for a fashion magazine. But the big surprise was Liam. The last time I'd seen him, he'd been a 3-year-old. Now he was a serious boy with attentive eyes and a mop of brown hair. "Hello, Grandpa," he said, holding out a small hand. "I'm Liam Atwood." "I know who you are, kid," I smiled, shaking his hand. "It's good to see you." "Liam," Paris intervened, "get your backpack from the car. We need to get your stuff organized." The boy nodded obediently and slipped out the door. "Thanks, Dad," Hugh said, shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot. "We won't bother you, really." "Well, make yourselves comfortable," I waved toward the stairs. "There are 3 bedrooms upstairs, so take any of them but mine. I'll be downstairs." I left for the kitchen, hearing them go upstairs, the floorboards creaking under their footsteps. It's a strange feeling, like uninvited guests breaking in, but you're forced to smile and pretend everything's all right. An hour later, I heard furniture being moved. A heavy armoire creaked across the parquet. Something clattered. I went upstairs and found that the guest bedroom, where my late wife Mirabelle's antique nightstand had stood, was now a ridiculous-looking dressing table. Paris was arranging numerous jars and tubes on it. "What's going on?" I asked, looking around the room. "Ah, Barton." Paris didn't even turn around. "I hope you don't mind a little rearrangement. This room is so old-fashioned. I thought I'd make it a little cozier." "Where's the nightstand that used to be here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "That antique?" Paris waved her hand nonchalantly toward the hallway. "We took it out. It was taking up too much space and didn't fit in at all." The nightstand was indeed in the corridor, pushed carelessly against the wall. On it was the picture of Mirabelle that I always kept in this room, the one of her laughing, covering her mouth with her palm, as she always did when her laughter was too loud. "This nightstand belonged to my wife," I said, picking up the photograph, "and it will stay right here where it was." "But Barton," Paris began, with that peculiar intonation one uses when talking to children or senile old people. "That's out of the question." I was just starting to bring the nightstand back into the room when Hugh appeared. "Dad, Paris is just trying to create a comfortable space," he began in his ever-apologetic tone. "We won't be here long." "Exactly." I looked him straight in the eye. "You're not here long. And in my house, things stay where I put them." Paris rolled her eyes but didn't say anything. Hugh nervously adjusted his glasses and mumbled something comforting in her direction. I returned the nightstand to its place, put the picture on it, and headed for the exit, but stopped at the door. One more thing. Dinner's at 7. If you're late, heat it up yourself. When I came downstairs, I found Liam studying my collection of seashells in the living room. He carefully picked each one up, examined it, and set it back down carefully. "Do you like them?" I asked, stepping closer. Liam flinched and looked at me guiltily. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. Mom says you're not supposed to touch other people's stuff." "It's okay." I sat down next to him. "They're not museum pieces. I've been collecting them for years. This one," I picked up a large ivory shell, "I found in Brighton when I was a little older than you, and this one I brought back from Greece." "You've been to Greece?" Liam's eyes widened with admiration. "I have, many times. When I was younger, I worked for a construction company that did international projects." "Cool," Liam exhaled. "What did you build there?" "Roads and bridges, mostly. Nothing much," I smiled, remembering those years. "But I liked my job." "And Dad says you were always at work," Liam said innocently. "That you were never home." I felt the smile freeze on my face. Of course, that's what Hugh remembered. Not the weekend trips to the zoo, not the model airplanes we collected together, not the swimming lessons, just my absence. "Adults have to work hard sometimes," I said finally, "especially when you have a family to take care of." Liam nodded seriously, as if he fully understood the complexity of the situation. "You have a very beautiful house, Grandpa," he said after a pause. "Especially the garden. Mom and Dad and I lived in an apartment and we didn't even have a balcony." "Well, now you have a whole garden at your disposal," I stood up. "Would you like me to show it to you after dinner?" Liam nodded vigorously, but immediately his face darkened. "I don't know if Mom would let me." "If Mom would let what?" Paris appeared in the living room doorway. Her voice was soft, but there was tension in her eyes. "Grandpa wants to show me the garden after dinner," Liam explained. "We'll see," Paris said evasively. "If you have a good dinner and don't get cranky, now go upstairs. I need to talk to Grandpa." When Liam left, Paris came closer and stopped, crossing her arms over her chest. "Look, Barton, I appreciate your help, but I think we need to set some rules." "Rules?" I raised an eyebrow. "Yes, rules. For instance, I'd rather you didn't interfere with Liam's upbringing, and these stories about your work. Hugh's still sensitive about the fact that you missed out on most of his childhood." "Don't you think," I said slowly, "that Hugh should be the one to discuss it with me if he has a grievance?" "You know Hugh," she smiled indulgently. "He always avoids confrontation. Someone has to be the voice of reason in the family." "And that someone is you?" I couldn't help but be sarcastic. "Exactly." She didn't even notice the irony. "One more thing. This room looks like a junkyard. We could make some space by removing some of these souvenirs." She pointed to the shelves of sinks and other little things I'd collected all my life. "Nothing's going to change in this room," I retorted. "If you don't like it, you can always find another place to live." "Don't be so nervous, Barton." Paris took a step back, raising her hands in a conciliatory gesture. "I was just making a suggestion. After all, we all want the comfort of the house where we live." With those words, she walked out, leaving me seething with anger. In the house where we live, as if she had any right to my house, which I had built with my own hands, in which I had lived with Mirabelle for almost 40 years. Dinner passed in tense silence. Hugh tried to make a few small talk about his job search, but quickly shut up under Paris's gaze. Liam was quietly picking at his plate, casting curious glances at me. Paris barely touched her food, claiming she had a special diet. After dinner, Hugh quickly cleared away the dishes, clearly trying to make up for the tension of the situation. I caught him in the hallway as he carried a stack of plates into the kitchen. "Hugh, we need to talk," I said quietly. "Sure, Dad," he swallowed nervously. "About what?" "About how long you plan to stay here, and about how your wife is behaving in my house." Hugh turned pale and looked away, as if he was afraid Paris might hear us talking. "Dad, please," he whispered. "Not now. Paris is going through a difficult time, losing her house, moving. She's just trying to make herself comfortable." "By rearranging my stuff?" I shook my head. "Hugh, you've always been a gentle man, but you need to show some character here. This is my home, and I won't allow—" "Hugh!" Paris's voice came from the living room. "Can you come here for a moment?" My son threw me a guilty look and hurried away at my wife's call, leaving me standing in the hallway with unspoken words. I returned to the living room and saw Paris reprimanding Hugh in a muffled but clearly annoyed voice. Liam was sitting on the couch leafing through a book, but I noticed him looking up from time to time, watching his parents. "Liam," I called out, walking over to the couch. Would you like to see the garden? The boy looked at his mother uncertainly. Mom? Paris interrupted her tirade and looked at us. It's getting late, Liam. It's bedtime soon. It's only early 9 o'clock, I pointed out. And it's still light outside. Liam has a regimen, Paris cut her off. Maybe tomorrow. I saw the disappointment on my grandson's face and decided not to insist. I didn't want him to witness another fight. Sure, tomorrow, I agreed. The garden wasn't going anywhere. Liam smiled weakly at me, then obediently got up and walked toward his mother, who was already holding out her hand to him. Good night, Grandpa, he said, turning around. Good night, Liam. When they left, Hugh stomped awkwardly into the living room and headed for the stairs as well. Dad, He started to say something, but then just waved his hand. Good night. Left alone, I sank into my chair and closed my eyes. The house that had always been my sanctuary suddenly felt foreign and hostile. I could hear doors slamming upstairs, water running, Paris saying something. Her voice, even muffled by the walls, sounded commanding and demanding. It won't be long, I said to myself. Just a few months. I can take it. But in the back of my mind, I already knew that those few months could stretch indefinitely, and that Paris wouldn't rest until she'd remodeled my house and my life to suit herself. 2 weeks turned into a month, and then 2. The June heat filled the house with stuffiness, and with it grew the tension between us. I felt like a stranger within my own walls. My kitchen, where I used to have a leisurely breakfast with a cup of strong coffee and a newspaper, was now a noisy train station in the mornings. Paris was making some kind of special smoothie in a blender, whose rumble seemed likely to wake the dead. Hugh was hurriedly swallowing toast, getting ready for another job interview. Liam, sleepy and disheveled, chewed his cereal quietly, casting conspiratorial glances at me. My living room, where I liked to spend my evenings with a book, was now occupied by the TV, which Paris had turned on full volume, watching some pointless reality show. My bathroom was filled with countless feminine gizmos, from jars of creams to a poison-pink washcloth hanging directly above mine. Even in my office, the only place I'd declared off limits, I sometimes found signs of someone else's presence. Books rearranged, a chair moved, the window open even though I always kept it closed. But worst of all was that appraising look in Paris's eyes. I caught it all the time. She wasn't looking around my house as a guest, but as a potential owner. Once I caught her in the bedroom, where she was pulling out the drawers of a dresser, peering at the contents. What are you doing? I asked sharply, and she flinched. Oh, Barton. Paris quickly slammed the drawer shut and smiled that special smile that never affected her eyes. I was just looking for extra blankets. The evenings have gotten cooler. The blankets are stored in the hall closet, I said coldly. And it's June. It's almost 30 degrees outside. Really? She pretended to be surprised. I feel cold at night for some reason. Must be the drafts. This house is so, old. There was something in her voice that made me uncomfortable. It was as if she was evaluating not only my house, but also me as old as these walls. If you don't like my house, I started, but Paris interrupted me. No, no, no. She headed for the door, walking around me in a wide arc. I'm just stating a fact. The house is beautiful. It just needs renovation. With that, she slipped out of the room, leaving me with the unpleasant feeling of having just been robbed. Hugh didn't interfere in our confrontations with Paris. He seemed to shrink back every time the tension between us rose. My son, a man in his mid-20s, acted like a frightened teenager afraid of angering an overbearing parent. Only that parent wasn't me. It was his wife. One evening, when we were alone in the kitchen, I tried to talk to him. How's the job hunt going? I asked, pouring myself a cup of tea. Hugh sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose under his glasses, a gesture he had adopted from me. Not really, to be honest. I've been to 3 interviews in the last week, but he threw up his hands. They say I'm overqualified for some positions and underexperienced for others. What about housing? Have you looked at anything? Hugh tensed even more. Not yet. With the job situation, we can't afford to rent something decent. Hugh, I set my cup down. When you called, it was a couple of months. Soon it'll be 3. I know, Dad, he lowered his head. I'm trying, but you can see how difficult things are right now. It's not just about time, I continued. It's the way Paris is acting. She's rearranging my stuff, breaking my rules, invading my personal space. She's just trying to make the house more comfortable, Hugh defended himself, but there was no confidence in his voice. It's my house, and it was cozy enough before you came here. I cut him off. Paris is acting like she already owns it. Hugh was silent, avoiding looking me in the eye. Listen, son, I softened my tone. I'm not kicking you out on the street. I'm just asking you to respect my boundaries, and it would be nice to see some concrete steps toward your own place. I understand, Hugh muttered. I'll talk to her, but I knew he wouldn't. At least not in a way that would have any effect. In his entire life, Hugh had never been directly confrontational. Not with me, not with his teachers, not with his coworkers. He always chose the path of least resistance. Perhaps that was my fault too. Perhaps I had been too strict with him as a child, and now he was simply afraid of any conflict. Or worse, he'd learned to submit to a stronger personality, and Paris was taking great advantage of that. The only bright spot in this tense domestic atmosphere was Liam. The boy had inherited my love of order and systematization, a trait his father lacked. He stacked his toys neatly, always pushed his chair back after meals, and even arranged his shoes neatly in the hallway. But most importantly, he burned with the same inquisitiveness I had always appreciated in myself. He poured me with questions about everything in the world: why the sky is blue, how the TV works, why ships don't sink. And unlike many adults, he was really interested in the answers. We spent a lot of time together in the garden. I showed him how to plant seeds, how to care for plants, how to recognize birds by their singing. We built a birdhouse together and hung it on an old apple tree. We lay on the grass and looked at the clouds, thinking of what they looked like. "Grandpa," he asked one day when we were sitting on a bench by the pond, "why don't you and Daddy get along very well?" The question caught me off guard. I looked at his serious face and realized I couldn't get away with generalities. "Sometimes adults don't understand each other, Liam," I said finally. "When your dad was little, I worked a lot, and I didn't always get to spend as much time with him as I should have. He resented me for that. But you worked to make sure he had everything he needed, didn't you?" Liam looked at me with his clear eyes that read understanding in them, an understanding that was beyond deep. "Yes," I smiled, "but kids need more than things. They need attention. I realized that too late. My dad worked hard too," Liam said thoughtfully. "But now he's home all the time, and my mom says he's useless." I shuddered at that honesty. "Your mom's just upset that you had to move," I said, even though I didn't believe that explanation myself. "That's not what she meant." "No, that's exactly what she meant," Liam shook his head. "She says that a lot when she thinks I can't hear. She says that Dad's weak and will never amount to anything worthwhile." I didn't know what to say. Should I say Paris is wrong? But what if she is right? Hugh had never shown much ambition or drive to succeed. He'd always gone with the flow, taking the easiest path. And now it seems even that path has led him down a dead end. "People are different, Liam," I said finally. "Some want to achieve great things, others just want to live happily ever after. And that's okay. It's all about being a good person." "Is my dad a good person?" Liam asked. "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "Your dad's a really good person. It's just, sometimes he lacks determination." Liam nodded, as if that information confirmed his own observations. "Are you a good man, Grandpa?" I laughed. "I'm not one to judge, but I try to be." "I think you are," Liam said seriously. "You don't yell like Mom. And you explain things to me, instead of telling me I'm just a kid and I won't understand." I felt a lump come up in my throat. This kid saw something in me that my own son didn't. And in that moment, I realized that for Liam's sake, I was willing to tolerate Paris's presence in my house much longer than I'd originally intended. However, my resolve was severely tested a few days later. I was coming back from the garden when I heard Paris's voice coming from the living room. She was on the phone, and there was a note in her voice that I hadn't heard before. A predatory, anticipatory tone. "Yes, Shelley, it's just a matter of time," she said. "You should see this house. 3 bedrooms, a huge garden, and it's in the center of Lancaster. Real estate like this is worth a fortune right now." I stood in the hallway, hesitant to come in and interrupt the conversation. "No, we're not going to sell it, at least not right away," Paris continued. "We need to redecorate first, make some repairs. This place looks like it was last updated in the 70s. I felt the blood rush to my face. She was talking about my house, the house I built with my own hands, as my future property. "Of course, there is one small problem," her voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper. "The old stubborn one is still here, but it's only a matter of time, Shelley. He doesn't look particularly healthy, if you know what I mean." I froze, not believing my ears. She was talking about me like I was a nuisance, a temporary inconvenience that would soon disappear. "Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything illegal," Paris laughed, and it sent a chill down my spine. "It's just that at his age, things happen to people. Bad things happen to people at his age, especially when they live alone in a two-story house with a steep staircase." I took a step back, then another, trying not to make any noise. Walked out the back door and walked around the house to enter through the main entrance, slamming the door loudly. When I entered the living room, Paris had already finished talking and was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine as innocently as if she hadn't just discussed the prospect of my imminent death. "Oh, Barton," she looked up. "Have you finished tending to the garden?" "Yes," I tried to keep my voice casual. "Where's Liam?" "Upstairs doing homework." She turned back to the magazine. "I don't understand what kind of homework there is in the summer. But you insisted on those extra classes." "It wasn't my idea, it was his teacher's," I reminded her. "And Liam wanted to take math." Sure, Paris said. "At 6, all kids dream of solving equations instead of playing outside." I didn't respond to that provocation. I was more concerned with what I'd heard a moment ago. Paris wasn't just annoying me with her attempts to remodel my house. She posed a real threat. That night, lying in bed, I thought long and hard about what to do next. Kick them out right now? But where would they go? Hugh still hadn't found a job, which meant they wouldn't be able to rent even the most modest apartment. Plus Liam. The thought of not seeing my grandson again was almost physically painful. Should I talk to Hugh? Tell him what I'd heard? But what if he doesn't believe me? Or worse, believe me but do nothing? I knew my son too well. He always avoided conflict, especially with Paris. And then it hit me. Maybe the only way to protect myself is to change the will. Make sure Paris doesn't get a dime of my inheritance, even if something happens to me. It wouldn't solve the immediate threat from her, but it would at least take away her motivation. The next morning, I called my old acquaintance Oliver Pratt, who worked as a lawyer. We arranged to meet in 2 days at his office. Paris noticed a change in my mood. She became more cautious, more polite, though I could still see that appraising look in her eyes. She continued to look around the house, opening closets, looking in drawers. One day I even caught her in my office going through my papers. "What are you doing here?" I asked sharply, and she jumped in surprise. "Oh, Barton," she pressed her hand to her chest. "You scared me. I was just looking for paper clips. Liam has an assignment at school, and he needs to do some kind of applique." "The paper clips are in the kitchen, in the drawer by the refrigerator," I said coldly. "And my office is not the place to look for office supplies." "Of course it is," she said quickly, heading for the exit. "I just thought you might have something suitable. You're an engineer. You must have all sorts of drafting supplies." I watched her slip out of the room and felt my anxiety rise. What was she really looking for? My will? Information about my finances? That same evening, I discovered that the lock on my office door was broken. Someone had obviously tried to get in while I was away, and I had no doubt who it was. I decided not to cause a scandal, but I took precautions. I put all the important documents in the safe I had installed behind the bookcase years ago. I always kept the keys to the safe with me. The next day I went to Oliver and changed my will. Most of my estate was now to go into a trust in Liam's name, with the stipulation that he would only have access to it when he reached the age of 25. Hugh would receive only a small amount of money, enough to help him get back on his feet, but not enough to get Paris's attention. I bequeathed the house itself to my cousin Archie, with whom we had always been close, on the condition that he never sell it to Hugh or Paris. Back home I felt a little calmer. At least now Paris wouldn't be able to profit from my death, even if... No, I didn't even want to think about her taking any active steps. She seemed calculating and cold, but still not that cruel. However, on the evening of that day, something happened that made me reconsider that assessment. I was sitting in the kitchen when I heard Paris talking to Liam in the living room. Her voice sounded unusually soft, almost affectionate. "Liam, honey," she said, "you do realize that Grandpa is very old, don't you? Old people sometimes, well, they don't always have a good grasp of reality." "What do you mean adequately?" Liam asked. "It means right," Paris explained. "Old people often forget things, get confused, sometimes even make up things that didn't happen. It's called dementia or senile dementia." "But Grandpa's not like that," Liam objected. "He remembers everything, and he shows me different experiments and explains how the world works." "That's right now, honey." Paris's voice had a patronizing tone to it. "But that could change at any moment. And when it does, you have to tell me right away, okay?" Why? Liam wondered. Because it could be dangerous, Paris explained patiently. Grandfather could hurt himself or other people. If you notice that he's acting strange, telling stories, accusing someone of something, or just forgetting basic things, you have to tell me right away. Promise? Okay, Liam agreed uncertainly. But Grandpa won't hurt anyone. He's kind. Of course he is, Paris reassured him. I'm just worried about him. We all have to take care of Grandpa, don't we? I quietly backed away from the door, feeling everything inside go cold. She was preparing the ground, trying to make Liam question my sanity. And the next step would undoubtedly be to try and convince Hugh of the same. And then, if anything happened to me, they'd blame it on an accident with an inadequate old man. That night I couldn't sleep for a long time. I lay in bed, listening to every sound in the house, thinking that Paris would stop at nothing to get my house. July had been unusually hot. During the day, the temperature was over 30 degrees, and even the thick walls of my house didn't keep out the heat. At night, I opened all the windows, hoping to catch even a faint breeze, but the air remained still and heavy, just like the atmosphere in the house. After I changed my will, I began to notice Paris watching me even more closely than before. Her gaze followed me everywhere, cold, calculating, assessing. She began to talk to me more often, inquiring about my health, offering to help with chores. This sudden concern alarmed me more than open hostility. Hugh had changed too. He became even more taciturn, even more withdrawn. Sometimes I caught a guilty look in his eyes, but as soon as I tried to speak to him, he would find an excuse to go away. He had almost ceased to mention looking for work, and I suspected that he was resigned to the idea of living indefinitely on me. Liam was the only relief in this tense environment. We spent more and more time together, often in the garden, away from the house and Paris's scrutiny. I taught him the basics of gardening, telling him about different plants and showing him how to care for them. The boy turned out to be a surprisingly capable student, patient, attentive, with a real love of wildlife. One such day when we were working in the far corner of the garden, Liam suddenly asked, "Grandpa, why does Mom always talk to you in that weird voice?" What strange voice? I wondered, though I knew exactly what he meant. Like she's talking to a little kid, Liam frowned. Or someone who isn't very smart. She talks to me like that sometimes when she thinks I don't understand something. I didn't know what to answer. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that his mother thinks his grandfather is an old man out of his mind, and maybe even tries to convince others of it? You see, Liam, I began gently, adults sometimes misunderstand each other. Your mom probably thinks that because I'm older, I need to explain things in a special way. But that's stupid, Liam said with childlike candor. You're the smartest person I know. You know everything in the world. I laughed, touched by his faith in me. Not everything, of course. No one knows everything in the world, but thanks for the compliment. Mom says you get confused and forget things, Liam continued. She said it's called dementia. Dementia? I prompted, feeling a chill go down my spine. Yeah, that's the word, Liam cheered. She says you have it, or you will soon. But I don't believe her. You don't forget anything. I put down the garden trowel and sat on the small bench I'd once made for Mirabelle. Liam squatted down next to me, looking at me anxiously. Grandpa, are you upset? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's okay, Liam. I put my arm around his shoulders. I'm not upset. I'm just thinking. You know what your mom says. It's not true. I don't have dementia and I don't forget things. But sometimes grown-ups don't say what they really mean. You mean they're lying? Liam's eyes went wide. Not necessarily lying. I tried to soften my words. Sometimes they just see the world in their own way. Your mom probably worries about me, in her own way. Liam nodded thoughtfully. Like when she says she's worried about my health and that's why she won't let me eat ice cream? I couldn't hold back a smile. Something like that. Except in the case of ice cream, your mom might actually be right. We went back to work, but the conversation with Liam wasn't getting out of my head. Paris was deliberately trying to make it seem like I was losing my mind. And the scary thing was, that tactic might have worked. If something happened to me, and Paris claimed that I had simply fallen because of senility or forgetfulness, who would doubt her word? Hugh, who is always inclined to believe his wife. The neighbors who only see a glimpse of me. Even if Liam told the truth, who would believe a 6-year-old against a grown woman's convincing version? That night, I decided it was time to take more decisive action. The next morning I was going to go see my old friend Harry Lewis. who had served with the Lancaster Police Department for almost 30 years. He had retired only a year ago and still kept in touch with former colleagues. I wanted to tell him my concerns, maybe even ask for advice on how to keep myself safe. But I was not destined to carry out that plan. It started out quite normally. After dinner, Hugh went to his room. He'd been spending more and more time there lately, staring at his computer. Liam was already in bed. He hadn't been feeling well the last few days, probably because of the heat. Paris stayed downstairs, sprawled out in the living room with a glass of wine and a tablet. I went upstairs to check on Liam. The boy was already asleep. His breathing was even, and his forehead was cool. I quietly left his room and headed for my room, but Paris's voice stopped me on the stairs. "Barton, can I talk to you?" She was standing at the foot of the stairs, still with the glass in her hand. In the half-light of the hallway, her face seemed especially pale and pointed. "I'm tired, Paris," I replied, continuing downstairs. "Let's postpone this conversation until morning." "It's important," she insisted. "This is about the future of this house." I stopped in the middle of the stairs, looking down at her. "What's wrong with it?" "Not with him, with you." Paris took a sip of wine. "Hugh and I are concerned. Lately you've become forgetful. Mixing up the days of the week, forgetting to turn off the gas in the kitchen, talking to yourself in the garden." "Not at all," I objected. "And since when do you keep track of my daily routine?" "Not me, Hugh," she said, climbing a few steps. "He's too delicate to tell you himself, but he's worried. We both do." "Really?" I couldn't help but be sarcastic. "I think you're just looking for an excuse to declare me incompetent so you can take control of my house." Paris took another step up the stairs. There were only a few steps between us now. "How can you say that?" There was a whiny note in her voice. "We care about you. We want to help." "Help you do what? Get me down the stairs?" I wasn't going to back down. "I overheard you talking to your friend Paris about how you plan to redecorate my house once I'm gone." Paris froze. Something akin to fear flashed across her face, but it was immediately replaced by an expression of hurt innocence. "You've been eavesdropping on my conversations? See, this is what I'm talking about. This paranoia, these unfounded accusations. You clearly need help, Barton." She climbed another step, and now we're only a few feet apart. "The only thing I need," I said firmly, "is for you and Hugh to find another place to live. The sooner the better." "You're kicking us out?" Paris opened her eyes wide. "Your only son? Your grandson?" "I'm not kicking Liam out," I clarified. "And even Hugh can stay if he wants to. But you, Paris, you have to go. You can't tear this family apart." Her voice grew louder. "What will people say? What kind of father are you? Throwing your son and grandson out on the street?" "I'm not throwing anyone out," I objected. "I just don't want people in my house who want me dead." Paris abruptly set her glass down on the step and climbed even higher. Now she stood directly below me, her face contorted with rage. "You're out of your mind, old man," she hissed. Hugh was right. You really are out of your mind. Maybe you should see a specialist, or even spend some time in an institution, for your own safety, of course. "Get out of my house." I took a step down, intending to walk past her. What happened next happened so fast, I barely had time to realize. Paris suddenly threw her arms forward, resting her palms on my chest. I felt a violent jolt and lost my balance. I tried to grab the railing, but my fingers slipped. The next moment I was flying downward, waving my arms helplessly. The impact with the floor was deafening. Pain pierced my left shoulder and side. My ears rang, and black spots swam before my eyes. I lay there trying to focus my eyes, and saw Paris slowly descending the stairs, her face strangely calm, almost serene. "Barton?" Her voice sounded like through absorbent cotton. "Oh my God, Barton, what happened? Did you fall?" She knelt down beside me, but she didn't rush to help. Instead, she looked around as if to see if anyone had seen what had happened. "Help!" I wheezed, trying to sit up. Sure. Paris supported me lightly under my head. "You must have lost your balance. It happens at your age. It's a good thing you didn't fall from the top. I'll get Hugh and we'll help you." "You pushed me." I looked her straight in the eye. "What?" She pretended not to hear me. "You hit your head, Barton. You need to lie down." "You did." "I did." "Me," I repeated louder, wincing at the pain in my side. "Here we go." Paris shook her head with feigned sympathy. "The hallucinations I told Hugh about. You fell, Barton, on your own. I was just trying to hold you up, but I didn't have time." She rose to her feet and took a step back, looking down at me. "I'll go after Hugh, don't move." Just as she turned toward the stairs, I heard another voice, a childish, frightened but determined voice. Mommy pushed Grandpa. Liam was standing at the top of the stairs, clutching his teddy bear tightly. His eyes were wide with terror. Paris froze, then slowly turned to her son. Liam, honey, did you have a bad dream? Grandpa just fell over. I was trying to help him. No, you didn't. Liam's voice had a confidence in it that you rarely hear in a 6-year-old. I saw the whole thing. You pushed him. That's it. He made a pushing motion with his hands. Liam, Paris's voice became menacingly low. I woke up because I was thirsty, Liam continued. And I saw you on the stairs. You were angry. And then you pushed Grandpa, and he fell. Paris quickly climbed the stairs and grabbed Liam by the shoulders. You don't know what you're saying, she hissed. You were sleepy. You imagined it. Let him go. My voice sounded unexpectedly firm. Suddenly, the front door swung open, and my neighbor Noah Quint entered the hallway. He was in his usual work clothes, a plaid shirt and jeans with a toolbox in his hand. Sorry for the intrusion, Barton, he said, not noticing what was happening at first. The door was unlocked, and I thought I'd run in about that patio board. Oh my God, what happened? He saw me on the floor and rushed over to me. Barton, are you okay? He knelt down next to me. What happened? He fell down the stairs, Paris said quickly, coming down with Liam. Lost his balance. I was just about to call Hugh. Mom pushed Grandpa, Liam shouted, breaking free of her grip. I saw it. Noah froze, looking from Liam to Paris to me. What? Nonsense, Paris laughed nervously. He just woke up. He was dreaming. I wasn't asleep, Liam repeated stubbornly. I saw everything. You were fighting, and then Mom pushed Grandpa, just like that. He made the pushing gesture again. Noah straightened up, his face wary. Barton, is it true? You were pushed? I looked at Paris, at her pale face with the frozen smile, at her hands gripping Liam's shoulders tightly, and nodded. Yes. Paris pushed me, intentionally. Paris released Liam and stepped toward me. Barton, you don't know what you're saying. Her voice shook. You hit your head. You're in shock. I'm calling an ambulance, Noah said firmly, pulling out his phone. And the police too. No, Paris exclaimed. That's not necessary. This is a family misunderstanding, and we'll take care of it ourselves. Ma'am, Noah looked at her with obvious disbelief. The child says you pushed an elderly man down the stairs. This isn't a family misunderstanding. This is assault. He stepped back a few steps and began dialing a number. Paris stood thunderstruck, her eyes darting from Noah to me, then to Liam, who was slumped against the wall, looking at his mother with a mixture of fear and determination. At that moment, Hugh appeared on the stairs, disheveled and sleepy. What's going on here? He saw me on the floor and rushed down. Dad, what happened? Your wife pushed me down the stairs, I said bluntly. What the hell was that? Hugh looked at Paris, puzzled. Paris, what's going on here? Your father fell. Paris walked over to Hugh and took his hand. He was confused, got tangled up on the stairs and fell. And now he's blaming me, and Liam too. He dreamt something in his sleep, and now he's repeating these wild accusations. I wasn't asleep, Liam said quietly but firmly. I saw you push Grandpa. You were mad at him. Hugh looked from his son to his wife, clearly not knowing who to believe. The ambulance is on its way, Noah said, coming back to us. And so are the police. They'll take care of it. Paris suddenly knelt beside me, her face contorted with sobs. Barton, please, she whispered. Don't do this. You don't realize what you're staking. If I'm arrested, what will happen to Liam? Hugh, you'll destroy our family. I looked at her contorted face and I couldn't see any genuine remorse, just fear of the consequences. You ruined it, I said, when you decided that my house was worth my life. No, you don't understand. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. I didn't mean to kill you. I was angry. I lost control. It was just a momentary lunacy. Please, Barton, please forgive me. For Liam's sake, for your son's sake. I looked at Hugh, who stood with his head down, unable to meet my gaze. Then at Liam, whose eyes were full of tears, but still determined to tell the truth. And finally at Noah, who stood at the door, phone clutched tightly in his hand, ready to defend me if necessary. I won't lie to the police, I said quietly. And I wouldn't let Liam lie. What happened today was no accident. You tried to hurt me. And who knows what you would have done if Liam hadn't seen and Noah hadn't come. The howling of sirens could already be heard in the distance. Paris was moaning softly, her face in her palms, her shoulders shaking with sobs. But I knew that those tears were not tears of remorse, but of fear of the imminent consequences of what she had done. Hugh raised his head at last and looked at me. His eyes were filled with endless fatigue and something else, perhaps the realization of the woman he'd let run his life all these years. Dad, he started, but he couldn't go on. Later, I said. We'll talk later. The sirens grew louder and louder. Paris continued to sob, curled up on the floor. Liam quietly walked over to me and took my hand. It's going to be okay, Grandpa, he whispered. I'll tell the cops the truth. I squeezed his small palm, feeling a lump come up to my throat. This little boy, this child, had shown more courage and honesty than his parents. And I swore to myself that I would do everything I could to protect him, no matter what happened next. Noah opened the door, letting the paramedics and police officers in. Paris suddenly jumped up, her face wet with tears, contorted with despair. Barton, please, she exclaimed, grabbing my hand. I beg you, forgive me. I swear I'll never do anything like this again. I was out of my mind. Please tell them it was an accident. But it was too late. 2 policemen entered the house, and one of them came straight to us. What happened? He asked, looking at the scene. That woman pushed an elderly man down the stairs, Noah said, pointing at Paris. The boy saw the whole thing. The policeman looked at Liam, then at me, and he had a look of understanding in his eyes. Ma'am, he said to Paris, you're going to have to come with us to the station. Paris shrieked and rushed to Hugh, clinging to him. Hugh, tell them I would never do such a thing. Tell them your father fell by himself. But Hugh was silent, his gaze fixed on Liam, who was still holding my hand. Ma'am, the policeman repeated more insistently. Please stand up. Paris rose slowly, her face frozen in a mask of terror. She made one last desperate attempt. Barton, she whispered. Think about Liam, about what will happen to him if I'm taken away. I looked at my grandson, then at her. I'm thinking about Liam, I said quietly. That's why I'm not going to lie. The medics were already at my side, gently groping my shoulder and side. One of them was shining a flashlight into my eyes, checking my pupils. You need to go to the hospital, sir, he said. Possible broken collarbone and concussion. I nodded, feeling the pain and fatigue come in waves. The cops had already taken Paris outside, where a patrol car was waiting. Hugh stood in the doorway, staring after them, his shoulders slumped as if under the weight of the world. Hugh, I called out, and he turned around. Take care of Liam. I'll be back as soon as I can. My son nodded, his face white as chalk. He walked over and knelt down beside me. Dad, I didn't know. I never thought she was capable of, he stammered. I'm sorry. This isn't the time, I smiled weakly. We'll talk when I get back. The medics were already preparing the stretcher. Liam was still holding my hand, his eyes full of tears. You're the bravest boy I know, I told him. Thank you. I love you, Grandpa, Liam whispered. I love you too, baby, I replied, feeling tears come to my eyes as well. The last thing I saw before the medics put me on the stretcher was Liam standing next to his father, small but determined. I spent 3 days in the hospital. The diagnosis? Broken collarbone, bruised ribs, multiple hematomas, and a mild concussion. You're lucky, the doctor said, reviewing the examination results. At your age, a fall like that could have ended much worse. I lay in the hospital bed and thought about how lucky wasn't exactly the word I would use to describe my situation. The nurse, a full-figured woman with kind eyes, checked on me regularly, and each time shook her head disapprovingly, muttering something about a monstrous sister-in-law. News travels fast in a small town. Hugh came every day, always alone, without Liam. He sat next to my bed, nervously tugging at the edge of the hospital blanket, and talked about insignificant things. The weather, the fact that the tomatoes were ripe in the garden, that the faucet in the bathroom was broken, but he'd already fixed it. Not a word about Paris. Nothing about what happened. It was as if we'd tacitly decided to pretend that nothing had happened. On my 3rd day in the hospital, I couldn't take it anymore. Hugh, I said, interrupting his monologue about how hard it was to find good bird food. We need to talk about Paris. My son froze, his face immediately pale, dark circles under his eyes. He looked about 10 years older. She didn't mean it, Dad, he said quietly. It was a moment of weakness. She's sorry. I looked at him and didn't recognize him. How could my son, the son I'd raised, justify the woman who'd tried to kill his father? She pushed me down the stairs, Hugh, I said in an even voice. Deliberately. If it hadn't been for Liam and Noah, who knows what she would have done next? She would have called an ambulance, Hugh said as if he was convincing himself. She would never have left you there bleeding or anything like that. She's not like that. What is she like, Hugh? I tried to keep my cool. Tell me what she's really like, a woman who's been planning for months how to get rid of me and get my house. Hugh shuddered. That's not true, he muttered. She was just really worried about our situation, that we had to move in with you. She felt humiliated. So she decided to push me down the stairs? I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. That's a great way to deal with humiliation. Hugh was silent, not looking up. What's wrong with her now? I finally asked. She's out on bail. Hugh still wouldn't look at me. My brother lent me some money, the hearing's in a month. And she came back to my house? I felt a wave of anger rising in me. Where would she go, Dad? There was a note of desperation in Hugh's voice. We have no money for rent and she's not allowed to leave town until the trial. Hugh, I tried to speak as gently as I could. That woman tried to kill me. I don't want her in my house when I get back. And I don't want her anywhere near Liam. Liam is her son. Hugh finally raised his head. You can't separate a mother from her child. The mother who pushed the grandfather down the stairs in front of the child? The mother who then tried to get him to lie? I shook my head. Think about it, Hugh. Is this a healthy relationship? Is that what you want to teach your son? Hugh was silent. I could see the struggle on his face between his habit of obeying Paris and the new frightening realization of who she really was. Just talk to her, he said at last. When you get back, she's really sorry. And she promises to get a job so we can move out as soon as possible. Her promises are worthless, I sighed. But I won't push for an immediate eviction, just because of Liam. When I get home, we'll set clear rules. In the meantime, Hugh, I want to see my grandson. There was a look of relief on my son's face, obviously relief that the conversation about Paris was over. Of course, Dad, I'll bring him over tomorrow. Liam arrived the next day with his father. The boy looked pale and gaunt, but his face brightened when he saw me. Grandpa! He rushed to the bed but stopped, hesitant to hug me for fear of hurting me. Come here, baby. I held out my healthy hand, and Liam pressed gently against me. Are you in a lot of pain? He asked in a whisper. Not so much anymore, I smiled. I'll get better soon, and I'll be home. I miss you. Liam looked up at me with serious eyes. Home now? Weird. Weird? I threw a quick glance at Hugh, who pretended to be interested in the view out the window. Mommy cries a lot, Liam said, and she and Dad argue all the time. Quietly, they think I can't hear. Also, he hesitated. What else, Liam? My mom says I got it all wrong, that she wasn't pushing you, she was trying to hold you back. She says I'm getting her in big trouble now. His voice shook. She says I might be taken to an orphanage if I don't say I was wrong. I felt my insides grow cold with anger. Paris was trying to intimidate the kid, make him lie, manipulate him using childhood fears. Liam, listen to me, I took him by the shoulders. No one is going to take you to the orphanage, ever. Do you understand? You will always be with a family that loves you. But Mom said, your mom is very upset and scared. I tried to choose my words carefully. Sometimes people say things that aren't true when they're scared, but you have to know the truth. No one is going to take you away from Daddy or me. What if I say in court that I saw Mom push you? I took a deep breath. Here it is, the main problem. Liam is a key witness, and Paris is trying to get him to change his testimony. Liam, I said seriously, the most important thing in life is telling the truth, especially when it's hard. If you saw my mom push me, you should say so. If you're not sure, you should say that too. The important thing is to say what you really saw and remember. Will Mom be mad? Maybe. I didn't want to lie to him. But that doesn't mean she'll stop loving you. And it certainly doesn't mean someone will take you away. I promise. Liam nodded thoughtfully, then pulled a folded piece of paper out of his pocket. I drew you a picture to help you get better faster. The next day I was discharged from the hospital. Hugh came to pick me up, and all the way home we were silent, each absorbed in his own thoughts. I looked out the window at the familiar streets of Lancaster whizzing by and thought about how my life had changed in the past few months. I had let people into my home who were supposed to be the closest to me, and one of them had tried to kill me. And now I was coming back to this house and she was still there. Paris was waiting for us in the hallway. She looked haggard, slimmed down with black eyes without her usual flawless makeup. She stepped forward as if she wanted to help me, but I pulled away, letting her know I didn't want her touch. Barton, she said softly. I'm so glad you're better. I looked at her and I couldn't see any genuine remorse, just fear of the consequences of my actions and contrived humility. "Where's Liam?" I asked, ignoring her greeting. "In his room, doing homework," Paris answered, her hands clasped together nervously. "I can get him if you want." "You don't have to. I'll go up to him myself later." In the days that followed, I noticed that the atmosphere in the house had changed. Hugh spent more time with Liam, often taking him into town or to the park. Paris remained aloof, spending most of her time in her room or sitting quietly in the living room with a book or her phone. She hardly spoke to me, only nodding and greeting when we happened to run into each other in the kitchen or the hallway. However, I noticed how her demeanor changed when Liam was around. She became emphatically caring, affectionate, always offering to help him with his homework, reading books before bed, cooking his favorite meals. And yet she always found a way to weave into the conversation mentions of how worried she was about Grandpa, how she had tried to help me on the stairs, how awful it was that there had been such a misunderstanding. "Liam, you remember what I told you about the importance of always holding onto the banister on the stairs, right?" I heard one day as I was walking past the kitchen. "You see what can happen if you're not careful." Grandpa slipped, and I was trying to hold on to him. "But you pushed him, Mom," Liam said quietly but firmly. "I saw it. You were fighting and you were very angry." "Baby, you were imagining it," Paris's voice was honeyed. "You were sleepy, looking away. Eyes deceive us sometimes, especially in the dark. I would never hurt Grandpa." "But I saw," Liam started. "Liam," Paris interrupted him, and there was metal in her voice. "We've talked about this before. If you keep repeating those fabrications, Mom's going to be in big trouble. You don't want Mommy to go to jail, do you? You and me and Daddy never being together again?" I decided to intervene. I walked into the kitchen, pretending I hadn't heard. "Liam," I called out, "do you want to help me in the garden? I need to check on the birdhouse." The boy jumped out of his chair with obvious relief. "Sure, Grandpa." "But Liam hasn't finished his breakfast yet," Paris protested, "and he has extra reading today." "Reading can wait." I looked her straight in the eye. "He's already finished breakfast." Paris pressed her lips together but didn't argue. The look in her eyes as Liam and I left the kitchen was full of unconcealed hatred. In the garden, in the shade of an old apple tree, I sat down on a bench and beckoned Liam to sit beside me. "I heard your conversation with Mom," I said bluntly, "and I want you to know that no one is going to take your mom to jail forever. Even if the court finds her guilty, she'll probably get probation. That means she'll stay with you. She'll just have to follow certain rules." "Really?" Liam looked at me hopefully. "Mommy's not going to leave?" "No, baby, she won't," I sighed. "But even if she was, you still have to tell the truth. Always. That's the most important thing." Liam nodded silently, then suddenly asked, "Grandpa, why do adults sometimes lie?" I wondered. "How do you explain the complexity of human nature to a 6-year-old? "Sometimes people lie because they are afraid of the consequences of their actions," I said at last. "Sometimes they lie because they want something they can't get honestly. And sometimes because they start to believe their own lies. That's the most dangerous kind of lie." "Does Mom believe she didn't push you?" Liam frowned. "Maybe," I shrugged. "People tend to rewrite unpleasant events in their memories, especially those they're ashamed of." "Like in that story about the naked king?" Liam suddenly asked, "where everyone pretended to see beautiful clothes, and at the end the king believed it too?" I smiled, amazed at his insight. "Yes, little one, very much so. August was unusually cloudy and rainy, as if nature had decided to match the gloomy atmosphere of the house. My arm was healing slowly but surely. The bandage had been removed, though the pain in my shoulder sometimes returned, especially before the rain. I tried to move around more to strengthen my muscles, but sometimes, especially after a long day's work in the garden, I had to take painkillers. The court date was set for the end of the month. The lawyer her brother had hired for Paris repeatedly tried to contact me, offering a mutually beneficial solution outside of court. I refused to meet with him, knowing that the only thing he wanted was to get me to change my testimony or withdraw the charges. Hugh became increasingly withdrawn and silent. He left early in the morning and returned late at night. He found a temporary job with a delivery service, though it barely covered his expenses. At home, he avoided not only me, but Paris as well, spending his time either with Liam or alone in his room. Paris, on the other hand, became unusually active. She cooked elaborate dinners, even though no one else particularly touched the food. She began a general cleaning of the house, moving furniture and washing windows as if trying to wash away invisible stains. She was suddenly interested in the garden, growing some exotic flowers, though she had never been interested in nature before. And most disturbingly, she barely let Liam out of her sight. I noticed that her conversations with her son were becoming more insistent and manipulative. She wasn't threatening directly anymore, but she was constantly reminding him how important family was, how scary it was when parents were taken away from their children, how dangerous it was to tell untruths, or things that seem true but aren't. "You know, Liam," I heard her say one day when she thought I was asleep in a chair in the living room and she and her son were in the kitchen, "sometimes our eyes and ears deceive us, especially when we are frightened or just woken up. The brain tries to fill in the gaps and creates false memories." "What are false memories?" Liam asked. "It's when you think you saw or heard something, but it didn't really happen," Paris explained patiently. "Or it didn't happen the way you remembered it. It's very common, especially in children." "Did I see a false memory?" Liam's voice sounded confused. "Of course you did, sweetie. That night when Grandpa fell, you had just woken up, you were scared, and your brain created a picture that didn't match reality. I actually tried to help Grandpa, to hold him up, but I couldn't. He fell on his own. But I remember you fighting," Liam said stubbornly. "You were really angry." "We were just talking." Paris's voice became strained. Maybe louder than usual, but it wasn't a fight. "And even if it had been, that doesn't mean I wanted to hurt Grandpa." "But you pushed him. I saw—" "No, Liam." Paris raised her voice, then quickly pulled herself together. "I'm sorry, honey. I didn't mean to yell. It just really upsets me that you keep believing in this misunderstanding. If you say that in court, I could be taken away from you for a long time. Is that what you want?" "No," Liam said quietly. "But Grandpa says you should always tell the truth." "Grandpa's very old, Liam," Paris said with a condescending tone in her voice. "He doesn't understand a lot of things. Sometimes the truth isn't what we saw, but what should have happened. What's right." I couldn't stand it and woke up with a loud cough and a wiggle in my chair. The conversation in the kitchen was immediately interrupted, and a moment later, Liam popped out of there. "Grandpa!" he exclaimed happily. "You're awake?" "Yeah, baby." I rubbed my eyes, pretending I'd just woken up. "I dozed off in the middle of the day. Old age is no fun." "You're not old," Liam said confidently. "You're just experienced." I laughed, but my laughter was quickly cut short when I saw Paris standing in the kitchen doorway. Her eyes looked at me with poorly concealed hatred. "Liam," she said strained, "it's time for homework." "But Mom, it's vacation time," Liam objected. "Still, you need to get ready for school." Paris kept her eyes on me. "Go upstairs. I'll be there soon to help you." Liam wandered reluctantly toward the stairs, giving me a guilty look. As he disappeared upstairs, Paris stepped closer. "You were eavesdropping." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. "I was asleep," I shrugged. "But even if I had been eavesdropping, so what? This is my house. You're turning him against me." Paris crossed her arms over her chest. "Making him believe things that didn't happen. If you mean the time you pushed me down the stairs, that did happen." I looked her straight in the eye. "And we have a witness." "A 6-year-old. Paris snorted dismissively. "Who would believe a 6-year-old against a grown woman?" "People believe children, Paris," I said calmly. "Especially when their testimony is corroborated by evidence and other eyewitnesses. Like Noah, for example, who saw you panicking and trying to silence Liam." Paris turned pale, but quickly pulled herself together. "We'll see who the court believes," she said, turning to leave. "In the meantime, I would ask you not to interfere with my relationship with my son." After she left, I sat in the chair for a long time, thinking about what I'd just heard. Paris was purposefully trying to manipulate Liam into doubting his own memories. It was dangerous not only to the case, but also to the child's psyche. I couldn't let it continue. The next day, when Paris had left for a meeting with her lawyer and Hugh was at work, I called Liam into the office. "Grandpa, do you have a new cell phone?" the boy asked, noticing the device on the desk. "No, it's a voice recorder." I showed him a small black rectangle. "Do you know what it is?" "It records voices," Liam nodded. "My teacher at school uses it when we read aloud." "Right," I smiled. "Liam, I want to record our conversation. What you say about the night I fell down the stairs. So that no one can say later that you're confused or forgot." Liam looked at the recorder apprehensively. "Would Mom find out?" "Not right away." I didn't want to lie to him. "But it might have to be shown in court." "And then Mom would be taken away?" Liam's eyes filled with tears. "Liam," I sat down next to him, "I promise you I'll do everything I can to keep your mom with you. But we can't let her escape the consequences of her actions. Do you understand? It's not fair. Fairness comes first, Liam said seriously, repeating a phrase I'd often told him. Exactly. And truth is part of justice. I turned on the recorder. Please tell me what you saw that night when I fell down the stairs. Liam took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. I woke up because I was thirsty, he began, and I heard voices downstairs. You and Mom were talking. No, fighting. Mom was talking loud, and so were you. I left the room and went to the stairs. You were standing on the stairs. You were taller and Mom was shorter. She was saying something about the house that she didn't like living here, and you said she had to leave. He stopped, looking at me with concern. That's right, Liam, I nodded. What happened next? Mom got even angrier. She said you were crazy, that you needed to be sent somewhere, a special place. You started going downhill and then, he swallowed. That's when Mom raised her hands and pushed you in the chest. Hard. You tried to grab the railing, but you couldn't, and you fell. What did Mom do when I fell? She came down the stairs. Liam frowned, remembering. Not quickly. She looked at you and took her time helping you. Then she said you fell on your own. But that wasn't true. I saw her push you. Are you sure you weren't mistaken? I asked a question that I'm sure a lawyer would have asked. Maybe you imagined it. I mean, you'd just woken up. It was dark. No, Liam said confidently. I saw everything. Mom pushed you. Like this. He made a pushing motion with both hands. Thank you, Liam. I turned off the recorder. You're a very brave boy. Mom's going to be mad. Liam lowered his head. Maybe. I couldn't fool him. But sometimes we have to do what's right, even if it makes other people angry. Like in that story about the boy in the dam, Liam asked, where he spotted a hole and stayed to plug it with his finger even though everyone was telling him to leave? Yes, the little boy. Very much so. I patted him on the head. Sometimes one person who speaks the truth can save many. After that conversation, I hid the recorder in a safe behind the bookcase. No one but me knew of its existence, and I was sure the tape was safe. 2 days later, however, when I returned from the garden, I found that the door to the study, which I always locked, was ajar. Inside was chaos. Books had been thrown off the shelves, desk drawers pulled out, papers strewn across the floor. The bookcase had been pushed away from the wall, exposing the safe, but the safe itself remained locked, impossible to open without the key I always carried with me. I slowly looked around the trashed room, trying to figure out what had happened. Someone was looking for something very purposefully, and I had no doubt who it was. As I stepped out into the hallway, I saw Paris coming down the stairs. She froze when she saw me, and a look of fear flashed across her face for a moment, quickly replaced by a fake smile. Oh, Barton, are you back from the garden yet? She spoke too loudly, too cheerfully. What were you looking for in my study? I asked bluntly. Your study? She feigned surprise. I wasn't in your office. I was doing laundry all day. Then who trashed it? I crossed my arms over my chest. Liam? Hugh? Or maybe the houseboys? I have no idea what you're talking about. Paris walked down a few more steps. Maybe you dropped something yourself and forgot about it. It's not uncommon at your age. Enough, Paris. I'm tired of this game. I know what you're looking for. Liam's deposition tape recorder. But you won't find it because it's in a safe place. Paris went pale, her smile frozen on her face like a misplaced mask. Did you sign Liam up? Her voice trembled. Without my permission? It's illegal. I'm his mother, and only I can consent to recording his voice. Not in this case, I shook my head. Not when it comes to testimony. What kind of testimony? Paris laughed, but it sounded fake. He's a child. He's confused. He doesn't realize what he saw. He understands everything perfectly well. I took a step toward the stairs. And his version of events hasn't changed since the beginning, despite all your attempts to make him doubt himself. You're turning him against me. Paris's voice was filled with real rage. You're manipulating him, making him believe things that didn't happen. You're describing your own actions, Paris. I shook my head. You're the one trying to make the child doubt his own memories. You're the one threatening him with consequences if he tells the truth. That's a lie, Paris was almost shouting. You just want to take my son away from me. You've always hated me. I didn't hate you, Paris, I said tiredly. I just saw you for what you are. Calculating, manipulative, and dangerous. What's going on in here? Hugh's voice came from the front door. He was standing in the doorway, fresh from work, looking at me and Paris with confused eyes. Your father taped the conversation with Liam without my permission, Paris blurted out. He's manipulating him, making him say horrible things about me. I asked Liam to tell me what he saw that night, I explained calmly. And I made a note to get his statement on record until Paris convinced him to change his story. Hugh walked slowly into the hallway, closing the door behind him. "Where's Liam?" he asked. "At the neighbors," Paris replied. "I sent him to play with their boy so he wouldn't hear all this." "Good," Hugh nodded. "Then we can talk frankly. Dad, did you really record the conversation with Liam?" "Yes," I saw no point in denying it. "I wanted to preserve his testimony until the trial." "And you, Paris?" Hugh turned to his wife. "Did you try to find that tape? Were you the one who trashed Dad's office?" Paris hesitated, clearly not expecting a direct question. "Yeah, I just wanted to make sure the tape wasn't fraudulently obtained," she mumbled. "Your father could have asked leading questions, could have told Liam what to say." "So you admit you were looking for the tape?" Hugh clarified. "Yes, I did," Paris suddenly exploded. "So what? I have a right to know what they say about me behind my back, especially when my son is involved." "No one is talking about you behind your back, Paris." I walked down the stairs so that I was on the same level as them. "I just wanted to document what Liam saw with his own eyes." "He didn't see anything," Paris screamed. "He was imagining it. He was sleepy. He was scared. He misinterpreted the situation." "What makes you so sure he didn't see anything?" Hugh asked in a low voice. "You didn't know he was there until he spoke up." Paris froze, looking at her husband with wide-open eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Hugh said slowly, "that if you were really trying to keep Daddy from falling, you would have nothing to fear from Liam's words. You wouldn't be trying to get him to change the story. You wouldn't have gone through the study looking for the tape. You'd just tell the truth, that you tried to help but you couldn't." "That's what I'm saying," Paris exclaimed. "But no one believes me." "Because you're lying," Hugh said quietly. "I know you're lying, Paris. I've known it for a long time. I just didn't want to admit it to myself." Paris stared at her husband, her face contorted with anger. "So you're on his side now?" she hissed. "After everything I've done for you, I pulled you out of the miserable life you led. I made you become a man. And now you're betraying me for this. This old man who's neglected you all your life?" "He has never neglected me," said Hugh. And I was surprised to hear a hardness in his voice that I had not noticed before. "He just worked hard to provide for my mother and me. But you've been using me, Paris, all these years. I was just a stepping stone to what you really wanted. Status, money, a comfortable life without having to put in the effort." Paris opened her mouth to object, but Hugh raised his hand, stopping her. "And when things didn't go according to your plan, when we lost the house and had to move here, you decided to find another solution. You decided it was easier to get rid of Dad and inherit this house than to find a job and build a life." "That's absurd," Paris turned pale. "How can you believe something like that?" "Because I heard," Hugh said quietly. "I heard your conversation with Shelley about how you were planning to renovate the interior once the old stubborn one was gone. I just didn't want to believe you were really capable of—" He hesitated. "But now I know. You really pushed him. And if it hadn't been for Liam, if it hadn't been for Noah, you might have followed through." Paris stared at her husband, her face frozen in a mask of horror. "That's not true," she whispered. I would never. No more lies, Paris." Hugh shook his head. "I can't take it anymore. I'm taking Liam and I'm leaving." "Where to?" Paris shouted. "You have nothing. You're nothing without me." "I'd rather be nothing than the husband of the woman who tried to kill my father," Hugh said quietly. "We could stay with friends, or get a room. I'll find a way out." "You can stay here," I said. "Both you and Liam. Paris is the one who has to go." "No!" Paris screamed. "You can't do this to me. You can't take my son away from me." "No one is taking your son away from you," Hugh said tiredly. "But I won't let you continue to manipulate him and me. And I won't let you stay in the house of the man you tried to kill. This is my last chance, Hugh." Paris's voice was suddenly pleading. "If I leave now, if I plead guilty, I'll go to jail. Is that what you want? Liam growing up without a mother?" "Don't try to be pathetic." Hugh's voice sounded tired. "You're not facing jail time. At worst, probation and community service. But even if that were the case, I'd rather Liam grow up without you than with you." That was the cruelest thing Hugh had ever said to his wife. And judging by the look on Paris's face, those words hit harder than any physical pain. "You'll regret it," she whispered. "You'll both regret it." With those words, she turned and rushed up the stairs. We heard their bedroom door slam. Hugh sank to the bottom of the stairs, covering his face with his hands. I should have realized sooner, he muttered. Should have seen who she was. But I was blind, deaf. I didn't want to admit the obvious. Don't blame yourself, son. I sat down beside him. Love often blinds us. It wasn't love, Hugh grinned bitterly. It was addiction. I was afraid of being alone, afraid I couldn't handle it. So I let her take me over completely. We sat in silence, listening to Paris pacing upstairs, moving things around, slamming drawers. What now? Hugh asked at last. Now, I sighed. We need to take care of Liam. He needs to know that he's loved and that he's safe, despite everything that's going on. Hugh nodded. I'll go get him, he said, getting up. He's at the Pearsons. It's 2 houses down. Dad, thank you, for not giving up on us no matter what. He hugged me, and I felt a lump come up in my throat. For the first time in years, my son and I truly understood each other. After our conversation, Paris locked herself in her bedroom and refused to come out. Hugh brought Liam home, and we cooked dinner together, trying to give the appearance of normalcy. Though the tension in the air was so thick, it felt like you could cut it with a knife. Liam could feel that tension. He was unusually quiet, barely touched his food, and kept casting anxious glances toward the stairs, as if expecting his mother to come down at any moment. It's okay, baby, I said, noticing his anxiety. Mommy was just tired and decided to rest. Is she mad? Liam asked, picking at his mashed potatoes with his fork. Hugh and I exchanged glances. She's upset, Hugh said carefully. But it's not your fault, Liam. Adults fight sometimes, but that doesn't mean they stop loving each other or you. I noticed that my son didn't directly answer my son's question, and it was the right thing to do. Paris was really angry. At us, at the situation, maybe even at herself. But Liam didn't need to know all the details of adult conflicts. After dinner, Liam and I sat in the living room. I read him one of his favorite books, and Hugh went quietly upstairs. I heard him knocking gently on the bedroom door, and then his muffled voice. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone sounded conciliatory. Grandpa, Liam suddenly interrupted my reading. Are Mom and Dad getting a divorce? I closed the book, marking the page with a bookmark. The question caught me off guard, but I had to answer honestly. I don't know, Liam, I said finally. It's a decision your parents have to make, but no matter what happens, they'll both love you, and so will I. Are we going to live here? Liam kept asking. I like your house, and the garden, and Martha and Noah around. He was referring to the neighborhood kids he'd befriended over the months. You'll always be welcome in my house, I hugged him. But again, it's your parents' decision where you'll live. What if they want to move far away? There was fear in Liam's voice. I won't see you again? It won't happen, I looked him firmly in the eyes. I promise you, Liam. Even if you move, we'll always see each other. I'll come to you, or you'll come to me. We'll find a way. Liam nodded, but I could see he was still concerned. Kids are very sensitive to the atmosphere in the house, and he certainly realized that something serious was going on. Now, I opened the book again. Let's find out what happened to our hero next. By the time the story was over, Liam's eyes were starting to slip. I carried him to bed, though Paris usually did that. He fell asleep almost instantly, cuddling his teddy bear tightly to him. When I came downstairs, I saw Hugh sitting in the kitchen with a cup of cooled tea. His face was so tired and sad that my heart sank. How's Paris? I asked, sitting down across from him. She's packing, Hugh said quietly. She's leaving tomorrow morning, to her brothers in York. And you and Liam? Hugh looked up at me with a haggard expression. I don't know, Dad. Paris wants us to go with her. Says her brother will help me get a job there. What do you want? I tried to speak softly without pressure. I want my son to be happy. Hugh rubbed his temples. I want him to have a normal family. A mother and father who love each other and him. That's a noble wish, I nodded. But Hugh, a normal family is not necessarily a complete family. Sometimes it's better to separate than to live in constant tension and lies. I know, Hugh sighed. It's just, it feels like such a failure, like I've failed at the most important task of my life. Marriage is a two-person job, I said, putting my hand on his shoulder. And it's not your fault Paris wasn't the person you thought she was. Maybe I'm the wrong person, Hugh grinned bitterly. Maybe if I'd been stronger, more successful, more determined, she wouldn't have been so desperate. Don't blame yourself for her choices, I shook my head. Each of us is responsible for our own actions. Paris chose to try to hurt another person instead of working honestly to solve problems. That's her choice, not yours. Hugh nodded, but I could see he wasn't completely convinced. Guilt is an insidious thing. It can take over a person, even when objectively it's not their fault. Whatever you decide, I said, know that this house is always open to you and to Liam. Always. Thank you, Dad. Hugh smiled weakly. I don't deserve your kindness. Not after the way I doubted you, the way I let Paris. You're my son, I interrupted him. And I love you no matter what. It's not something you have to earn. It's just there. I couldn't sleep for a long time that night. I thought about Hugh, about Liam, even Paris. I tried to figure out what drove her to such a desperate move. Had she always been like this, cold, calculating, capable of cruelty for its own sake? Or had life circumstances made her this way? Could it be that fear lurked behind her impeccable facade? Fear of poverty, fear of failure, fear of being left with nothing? I couldn't find answers to these questions, and in the end they didn't matter. All that mattered was that she was a threat to my family, and I had to protect Hugh and Liam from her manipulations. In the morning, I awoke to the sound of footsteps on the stairs and muffled voices. Looking out the window, I saw a cab waiting at the gate. Paris was carrying her suitcases out, Hugh helping her. Liam was nowhere to be seen. He was probably still asleep. I dressed quickly and went downstairs. Paris was standing in the hallway with 2 large suitcases ready to leave. Her face froze at the sight of me, her lips pressed into a thin line. So you're leaving, I said, not knowing how else to start the conversation. Yes, she answered briefly. To my brother's, if you're interested. What about the trial? I asked. Were you allowed to leave town? My lawyer arranged it, Paris shrugged. I have to be back by the hearing date. But that's not your concern anymore, is it? There was bitterness in her voice, but no remorse, just resentment and perhaps a sense of defeat. What will happen to Hugh and Liam? I asked bluntly. They'll come with me, of course. Paris gave me a defiant look. We're a family, despite your attempts to destroy it. I wasn't trying to destroy your family, I said calmly. I was just protecting myself and Liam from your influence. Call it what you want. Paris looked away. But Hugh and Liam are coming with me. We're going to start a new life, away from you and your influence. At that moment, Hugh walked into the hallway with another bag. He looked exhausted, as if he'd been up all night. Hugh, I said to my son, is it true? Are you going with her? Hugh lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. Yes, Papa. Paris and I have decided to try again. For Liam. For Liam? I couldn't believe my ears. Or because you're afraid of being alone. Don't start, Dad. Hugh held up his hand. I know what you're thinking, but it's my choice. Paris and I talked a lot last night. She admits she made a mistake. She promised to change. And you believe that? I couldn't hide my skepticism. I want to believe it, Hugh said quietly. I have to give her a chance, for the sake of our family. I looked at Paris, who stood with a triumphant smile poorly hidden behind a mask of humility. She had won. Somehow, despite everything that had happened, she had convinced Hugh to give her another chance, and she was going to take them both far away from me. What about Liam? I asked. Do you think he'd be better off with a woman who manipulated him, made him doubt his own memories? Dad, please, Hugh pleaded. Don't make this any harder than it already is. Paris is his mother. He loves her, and she loves him. Loves him? I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. She loves only herself, Hugh. She always has. And if you can't see that even now, after all that's happened, I don't know how else to get through to you. That's enough, Paris intervened. Hugh, the cab's waiting. Go wake Liam. Hugh nodded and went upstairs, leaving the 2 of us alone. As soon as he was out of sight, Paris turned to me, and her face changed. Gone was the mask of remorse she'd probably worn in front of Hugh. Now there was only cold hatred in her eyes. You thought you had won, she hissed, that you could get me out of Hugh and Liam's lives. But you miscalculated. Hugh is too weak to choose you over me. He's always been weak, always needed someone to make decisions for him. Before it was you, now it's me. You don't love him, I said, looking her straight in the eye. You're using him. I'm giving him what he needs, Paris parried. A sense of security, a sense of purpose. And what have you given him? Only an inferiority complex and a constant feeling that he's disappointing you. That's not true, I began, but Paris wouldn't let me finish. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not, she shrugged. What matters is that Hugh believes it, and he'll always choose me because I make him feel needed, and with you, he only feels guilty. I was silent, shocked by her candor. There was truth in her words, and that was what hurt the most. Maybe I really hadn't been able to give Hugh what he needed most: confidence in myself, in my unconditional love and pride in him. "And Liam?" I finally asked. "What will you give him?" "Stability," Paris answered. "A normal family. And in time, he'll forget everything that happened here. Children are remarkably malleable, you know." "If you hurt him." I started to, but Paris interrupted me. "Don't threaten me, Barton." Her voice turned icy. "Liam is my son, and I'm going to make sure he grows up to be a strong man, not like his father." At that moment, voices came from upstairs. Hugh was coming down the stairs, holding the hand of a sleepy Liam. The boy was dressed in traveling clothes, holding his teddy bear in his hand. "Grandpa?" Liam looked confusedly back and forth at me, then at the suitcases by the door. "What's going on?" "We're going on a little trip, sweetie," Paris said quickly, putting on her caring mother mask again. "To Uncle Rafe's. Remember him? He has a big house with a garden, and he even has a dog." "And Grandpa?" Liam looked at me. "Is he going too?" "No, baby." I crouched down so I was on the same level as him. "I'm staying here, but we'll see each other a lot, I promise." "Really?" Liam looked at his parents hopefully. "Of course," Hugh said hurriedly, not looking at Paris. "Grandpa will come to visit us, and you'll come here on vacation." Paris didn't say anything, but her look spoke for itself. I knew she'd do everything she could to keep those meetings from happening, to make Liam slowly forget me, to break our connection. "Liam," I took my grandson's hands in mine. "Remember what I told you about the truth, about how sometimes you have to be brave and say what you've seen and what you know, even if it's hard." "I remember, Grandpa." Liam nodded seriously. "I'll always tell the truth." Paris jerked her shoulder impatiently. "We should go," she said. "The cab's waiting, and it's a long drive." "Dad," Hugh finally looked me in the eye. "Yeah, I'm sorry about what happened." "Me too, son," I straightened up. "I hope you know what you're doing." "I have to try," Hugh said quietly. "For Liam's sake." I nodded, not trusting my voice. A storm of emotions raged inside me: rage, anger, frustration, fear for Liam. But most of all, a deep sadness at the realization that my son had once again chosen the path of least resistance, once again succumbing to Paris's manipulations instead of standing up for himself and his son. Liam hugged me one last time, tight and tight, like he didn't want to let go. "I'm going to miss you, Grandpa," he whispered. "I'll miss you too, baby," I stroked his head. "But I'll see you soon. I promise." Paris had already gone outside, Hugh following her with her bags. Liam took one last look at me, waved, and ran after his parents. I stood in the doorway, watching them get into the cab, the car pulling away and slowly moving down the street. And then I returned to the house, which suddenly felt empty and lifeless. For the first few days after they left, I wandered around the rooms like a ghost. There were signs of their presence everywhere. Liam's forgotten toy, Hugh's book on the nightstand, even Paris's perfume bottle in the bathroom. These little things were like a taunt, a reminder that not so long ago the house had been full of life, and now I was alone again. I tried calling Hugh, but he rarely answered, and when he did, the conversations were short and strained. I'd only been able to talk to Liam a couple of times, and that was under Paris's explicit supervision. I could hear her voice in the background, telling the boy what to say. A week after they left, there was a court hearing for Paris. I testified and provided a recording of the conversation with Liam, but the boy was not called to court. His testimony had been recorded earlier in the presence of a social worker. Paris admitted to losing control and unintentionally pushing me during an argument. The court sentenced her to probation and community service. As I suspected, she was not facing jail time. After the trial, I tried to talk to Hugh about the possibility of seeing Liam regularly, but Paris immediately pulled them both away, saying it was time for them to go back to York. In the weeks that followed, I tried to set up a schedule of visits, calling and writing letters. But Paris skillfully sabotaged all my attempts. Liam had an important test, or he was ill, or they had family events planned that couldn't be canceled. Hugh, as always, avoided direct confrontation, apologizing, promising that next time it would work out, but that next time never came. Finally, I realized that if I wanted to see my grandson, I would have to go through the courts. I contacted an attorney and began the process to establish an official order of communication with my grandson. "Do you realize that this could further strain the relationship with your son and his wife?" asked the attorney, a gray-haired man with tired eyes. I understand, I nodded, but I don't have a choice. Paris is doing everything she can to isolate Liam from me, and I can't let that happen, not after everything we've been through. In cases like this, the court usually considers the best interests of the child first, the lawyer said as he looked over my paperwork. And the fact that the boy's mother tried to hurt you will certainly be taken into account. But be prepared that the process may be long and unpleasant. I am ready, I replied firmly. Liam is worth every effort. And so began a new phase of my life, the fight for the right to be a part of my grandson's life. I knew Paris would resist with all her might. I knew Hugh would be torn between loyalty to his wife and guilt over me. Knew that Liam would be at the epicenter of this adult war, and that hurt me the most. But I also knew I couldn't back down. Not just for my own sake, for Liam, who needed at least one stable, reliable adult in his life. Someone who would show him what it meant to tell the truth, even when it was hard. What it means to stand your ground, even when it's easier to back down. What it means to love unconditionally without manipulation or ulterior motives. I stood at the window of my empty house, looking out at the garden that Liam and I loved so much, and thought about how strangely life turns. I had always thought that the most important battle of my life was fighting for my career, for financial stability, for the respect of my peers. I spent years building a home and a career, often at the expense of time with my family. And now, on the slope of my years, I've realized that the most important battle is just beginning. The battle for my grandson's heart and soul, for the right to be a part of his life, for the opportunity to pass on to him the values I hold important. And in this battle, I wasn't going to back down, even if I had to fight alone against Paris, against the system, even against my own son. Because sometimes you have to make hard choices to protect the ones you love. The house was empty, but I wasn't broken. There was a long fight ahead, but I was ready for it, for Liam, for a future where truth and justice still mattered.